Alabama has to get a more consistent, more productive pass rush in 2025. Whether you're talking about the defense or the team in general, that is going to be a critical factor in determining just how far Alabama goes. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of different guys who I think can end up making a substantial difference when it comes to Alabama's pass rush, which is obviously going to make a substantial difference when it comes to Alabama's season. Let's get started. What is up, everybody? Clint Lamb with A to Z Sports and Cover Crimson. So Alabama's pass rush has to be better than it was in 2024. It's 25 sacks, less than 2 sacks per game. Both of those two numbers ranked in the 60s nationally. That's not going to be good enough if you want to compete for a national championship in 2025. Now, I understand that Alabama had a top 5 defense in turnover rate. They were ranked in the top 5. That is fantastic, and they need to do a good job of keeping that going, but they've got to add a complementary pass rush where they're bringing the quarterback down and creating as many unfavorable situations for opposing offenses as possible, because that's where you can really start to stack the pass rush production. If you are having success in putting the offense in unfavorable down and distances, whether it's a second long or a third and long, those obvious passing situations, then you can pin your ears back, and now you go from maybe having just 1 sack on a drive to having multiple sacks and being able to actually stack on those numbers. Now, when you look at why Alabama was somewhat inconsistent or unproductive when it comes to the pass rush, obviously LT Overton was a disruptive player. He had 39 pressures this past season, which is very respectable. But he did not do a good job of converting enough of those pressures into sacks. He only had 2 sacks, and typically when you're seeing guys in that 35 to 40 pressure range, those guys usually have anywhere from 6, 7, 8, or maybe even 9 sacks, and yet he only had 2. So that's probably one of the biggest talking points, as he is widely considered Alabama's best returning pass rusher. He's got to do a much better job of finishing, but there's also a lot more that goes into all this, particularly at the other position than Bandit, which is what he plays, and that's the Wolves. Alabama did have some extreme circumstances when it comes to that position. In total, there were 6 different players who saw snaps at Wolf for various reasons. You had Quandarius Robinson, who was considered probably the best pure pass rusher on the team this past season. He goes down with a season-ending knee injury. You talk about Quay Russaw, who was technically the starter at Wolf. He gets banged up against Wisconsin, ends up being able to play against Georgia a couple of weeks later, but he was at no point healthy or 100% healthy for the remainder of last season, and it was pretty evident watching the explosiveness from him when he was out there on the field. You had Keanu Coote, one of the rotational players at that position. He gets 6 or 7 games into the season, elects to leave the team, enter the transfer portal, and now he's playing for Vanderbilt. So that's another pass rusher that you had early in the year that ended up having some extreme circumstances and you have to do without. You talk about a guy like Jahad Campbell, who was seeing situational snaps at Wolf. He was probably one of the better pass rushers on the team, but yet an injury to Deontay Lawson in the Oklahoma game made it to where Jahad Campbell could only play off-ball linebacker, and he no longer was seeing those situational snaps at Wolf. So that's another guy impacting things. So for a variety of reasons, there are understandable circumstances surrounding the lack of a consistent secondary pass rusher to LT Overton this past season. But the bottom line is that they have to be better in that area when it comes to 2025. I think the fact that Quay Russaw is expected to be healthy, Yanze Pierre is expected to be healthy, both of those two things are obviously going to help because they're expected to be Alabama's top 2 Wolves. But then you've got guys like Justin Hill, who is a true freshman, top 100 recruit, who could come in and help bolster that pass rush. You talk about Jamarian Latham and the fact that he went from playing Bandit last year to playing Wolf this year. He's dropped some weight. He adds a veteran presence to that room. You talk about Noah Carter, another former top 100 recruit. This guy has some juice off the edge and can get after the quarterback. If you put him in situations where he's able to pin his ears back, then he can win and do some things for you. Across the board, whether you're talking about Wolf or you're talking about Bandit, Alabama has a lot of options. I mean, I just rattled off several Wolves. You talk about Bandit, you've got LT Overton coming back. You have Jordan Renaud, who saw 140 snaps last year, averaged just over 10 snaps per game, has a nice power profile at that Bandit position. You're probably not going to see him playing inside too much, but he has the ability to get up to the quarterback as a true edge. And you also have a guy like Kelby Collins transferring in from Florida. You have Keon Keeley, who has a lot of upside as a pass rusher, had to get stronger at the point of attack and become more of a complete bandit if you wanted to see the field consistently. From all indications, he has done that. So Alabama has bolstered both of those two rooms as far as the guys who are going to be available and the guys who are going to be able to rotate. But they've got to understand that they are going to be a critical piece to Alabama's success in 2025. So they have to be able to win when it comes to the pass rush.